Have you ever wondered why, even after hours of scrolling through your phone, you still feel drained and unmotivated? It's like the more you try to rest, the more exhausted you become. That constant search for distraction isn't really helping you recharge, is it? Now, let me ask you this. Do you feel like you're always consuming but never really creating? That the exhaustion you're feeling isn't just physical, but mental too? This happens because we've become trapped in a cycle of chronic consumption, lacking a clear purpose. But here's the good news. There's a way out. In today's video, we're going to dive into how small changes in how we consume, rest, and create can transform your energy, motivation, and help you build a real, lasting sense of purpose. If you clicked on this video, chances are you're feeling overstimulated right now. And honestly, that's totally normal. You've probably been bombarded with content for hours, days, maybe even weeks, right? It's kind of wild when you think about it. For millennia, the powers that be have figured out how to keep people distracted and, of course, profit off that distraction. Human attention? It's like the ultimate currency. And I'm not just talking about today in this social media era, where algorithms are basically designed to keep you mindlessly scrolling for hours, only for you to feel kinda crappy afterward, and not even be sure why. This has been going on forever. Take ancient Rome, for example, with their bread and circuses strategy, handing out food and entertainment to keep people distracted while they quietly made a profit off selling stuff. Sound familiar? But hey, maybe this video will give you a little break from all that. Maybe it'll give you some tools to realize you actually do have control over your nervous system, and you can pull yourself out of this overstimulated state whenever you want. I get it though. Maybe you feel stuck. Maybe you've been living in that space of chronic consumption for so long that you've convinced yourself you're broken, or like you don't even know where to start to move towards something more meaningful, more creative. So how about we start right here? Take a deep breath. I mean it. Inhale deeply, and now, slowly exhale. Let go of all the tension. Seriously, right now. Feels a little better, doesn't it? The point is, you have way more control over this machine we call the body than you might realize. So, what's the big deal with all this consumption anyway? Like, what if I just want to distract myself with junk food or binge watching Netflix, or chasing that next hit of dopamine from whatever app I'm on? It feels good, right? And yeah, it does. So what's the harm in cheap dopamine? Well, here's the thing. Cheap dopamine is the kind of dopamine you don't really have to work for. It's that quick hit of pleasure. Think about the bread and circuses again. We're constantly bombarded with hyper-palatable, industrialized food that's straight up designed to hit those pleasure zones in your brain. It's engineered to be irresistible, but here's the catch. It doesn't actually nourish you. Instead, it causes a massive spike in dopamine, and after that high comes a pretty hard crash. What happens next? Well, your brain gets stuck in a pattern. You start to have these huge bursts of dopamine. That's what we call phasic dopamine, but it comes at the expense of your baseline or tonic dopamine levels. So afterward, you're left feeling unmotivated, tired, drained of energy. And you sit there wondering, why do I feel so lost? No direction, no drive. That's when anxiety and depression sneak in. And this cycle? It's the same old story as bread and circuses. Sure, people felt distracted in the moment, but eventually that constant numbing left them feeling worse in the long run. When your dopamine levels are constantly dropping below baseline, you find yourself reaching for more and more cheap dopamine just to get back to normal. It becomes a trap, a kind of slavery to the next hit of pleasure, whether it's food, entertainment, or whatever. That's the real danger of cheap dopamine. It's like you're stuck on this hamster wheel, chasing something that's always just out of reach, and it takes a toll on your mind and body. Before we dive deeper, I want to quickly mention that I've left a list of 4 amazing books down in the description. These are books that have personally helped me on my journey to break free from chronic consumption and focus on real, meaningful growth. If you're looking to take your personal development to the next level and want some extra resources, be sure to check them out. They're all about mastering your mind, building better habits, and finding purpose. Perfect companions for everything we're talking about today. I get it. If you're not familiar with the science behind it, Scrolling through social media might seem pretty harmless. I used to think that way too. But I've been there, stuck in that cycle of chronic consumption, where I had zero direction, no energy for anything. I'd pick up my phone, thinking I was resting by scrolling through Instagram or whatever, but in reality, I wasn't resting at all. It's actually super stimulating. You're hit with these constant dopamine spikes, thanks to the never-ending stream of new content. And the thing is, it doesn't just leave you tired, it makes you more anxious too. When your dopamine is out of whack, it messes with your self-control circuits, making it harder to keep your thoughts and emotions in check. Next thing you know, you're stuck ruminating, chewing over all these negative, pessimistic thoughts, and you're not even sure why. So what's the first step here? It's about moving from mindless consumption to conscious consumption. Let's be real, social media isn't going anywhere, it's here to stay. And honestly, trying to completely cut it out of your life is unrealistic. I'm not one of those extremists who's going to tell you to throw your phone in the ocean and go live off the grid. The trick is figuring out how to use it consciously. But I know, that sounds tough, especially when you're already caught up in chronic consumption, feeling unmotivated, and not even sure where to start. So here's the idea. You need to learn how to rest, like really rest. Not this fake rest where you pick up your phone and end up more overstimulated than you started. I'm talking about a practice called NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, or yoga nidra. It's actually an ancient practice that can boost your dopamine levels by up to 65% in just 20 minutes. Crazy, right? Plus, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, aka your relaxation and digestion system, which is basically the opposite of your sympathetic system, the one responsible for stress and fight or flight responses. So by doing this simple act of resting, just lying down and focusing on your body, you can recharge in a way that scrolling on your phone will never do. You see, that overstimulation we get from social media? It puts us in this constant state of agitation, and it pulls us further and further away from a state of curiosity and creativity. But you can reverse that. Instead of reaching for your phone when you're trying to rest, you need to actually rest. Your body needs that downtime. Jim Carrey even talked about this once. He joked about how depressed sounds like deep rest. And he's got a point. Sometimes, what people really need is deep rest, because they're completely burned out by the avatars they're living in, constantly overstimulated, anxious, and caught in that loop of rumination. One practice that's been a game changer for me is NSDR, or if the whole yoga thing throws you off, just call it non-sleep deep rest. It's simple. For 10 to 20 minutes, you lie down in a dark room, no distractions, no noise, just you and your body. I do this every day, and let me tell you, it makes a massive difference. I usually do it right before recording videos, and it gives me this huge boost of motivation and focus. Plus, it recharges my dopamine levels. Now, I won't lie to you, it's tough at first. Sometimes I'll spend the first 10 to 15 minutes just trying to get my mind to calm down. But this is how your body moves from that state of overstimulation and dopamine craving to a state of relaxation and genuine rest. The more you practice this, the better you get at switching gears and returning to a calm state. This is where heart rate variability, HRV, comes in. It's basically your body's ability to go from being all hyped up and anxious to being calm and relaxed. That transition you feel? It's called limbic friction, and it's your body's way of fighting to calm down. The more you practice real rest, the easier it gets to move through that friction and find your center again. Trust me, your nervous system will thank you. As Jim Carrey put it, when people are feeling depressed, it's often their body crying out for deep rest. Now, I'm not saying rest alone will cure depression, especially if we're talking about clinical depression. That's a whole other conversation. But when you're feeling low, when your nervous system is run down and your dopamine levels are scraping the bottom, that's your body begging for a real break. And let's be clear, resting doesn't mean picking up your phone and getting sucked back into that endless scroll. Real rest is about embracing boredom. Remember that feeling? It's something we used to experience all the time as kids, back before the days of hyper-stimulating social media algorithms, when boredom wasn't the enemy. Back then, we actually got comfortable with being bored. And you know what happened when you sat with it long enough? Curiosity kicked in. You'd start exploring, playing, getting creative. The neuroscience behind play is fascinating. It's actually super healthy for your brain and body. When you engage in play, your brain gets flooded with natural feel-good chemicals like endogenous opioids. Creativity blossoms, and you stop seeing the world in such a straight line. Instead, opportunities and ideas seem to pop out of nowhere. Play also boosts your serotonin, regulates your dopamine, and surprise, it's a huge boost to your creativity. And that's how new possibilities start to open up in front of you. So, step 1, conscious consumption. How do you even begin to do that? It starts with real rest. Set aside 10 to 20 minutes a day where you lie down, do nothing, literally nothing. No phone, no music, no distractions, and ideally do it in the dark. The first few times you try this, it might feel almost impossible. Your brain is so used to being overstimulated that it's hard to just be still. But over time, as you keep showing up for this practice, you'll start to feel the benefits. It's like anything else. You've got to train your nervous system to shift gears and actually rest. Once you start to find real rest and reconnect with that inner curiosity, you'll notice something incredible. Your relationship with social media will change. Instead of mindlessly chasing that next dopamine hit, you'll begin to approach it with intention. Suddenly, you're not using social media just to fill a void or escape boredom. You're using it as a tool. And trust me, social media is just that. A tool. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but the algorithms are designed to hook you, so we've got to be smart about how we use it. That's why we're here, figuring out how to take back control and turn these platforms into something that serves us, not the other way around. And look, people are doing this all the time. The internet is an incredible resource. You can learn almost anything for free these days. Whether it's through AI tools, YouTube tutorials, or podcasts, the knowledge is out there. Once you start using social media consciously, notice how different your body feels. You'll know it when it happens. Now, the second thing I want you to do is this. Engage in some kind of creative work. How do you start? Easy. Everything you're learning right now, everything your curiosity pulls you toward, write it down. Grab a notebook and start jotting down all those thoughts, ideas, and things that spark your interest. When I first started creating content, I wrote down everything I was learning, anything that grabbed my curiosity. Writing is such a powerful practice. And here's the kicker. Research shows that writing, especially by hand, is incredibly good for your well-being. So write about what's going on in your head, your feelings, your frustrations, your concerns, the things that excite you, whatever. Scribble it all down. It's like a mini therapy session with yourself. At the start, I really recommend making a habit of writing things down. Over time, you might not need to do it as much, but in the beginning, it's key. And if writing's not your thing, that's cool too. You can record voice notes or just sit with your thoughts and let them flow. The point is to give your mind some direction. You're not waiting around for purpose to magically show up. You're creating it. It's about following your curiosity and letting that spark something meaningful, something creative. It's about honoring that inner child. When you're caught in chronic consumption, when motivation is at an all-time low and you're binging on junk, whether that's food, social media, or something else, it's often a symptom of a bigger issue, the lack of purpose. You don't know where you're headed, so you end up numbing yourself with easy distractions. But the good news? You can change that. The smallest, simplest step toward finding your creative flow is writing down your thoughts like a diary. Think of it as diary therapy. That's how I started when I first began making videos. I wrote down my insecurities, my plans, my dreams, everything, and it helped. Writing boosts your serotonin and dopamine, which in turn fuels your motivation to keep going. So, grab a notebook, start scribbling, and see where it takes you. Once you start writing, you'll notice an almost immediate shift in your mental state. It's like opening the floodgates. All those habits we get stuck in, whether it's endless scrolling on social media, binging on Netflix, or even stuff like pornography, they're not the core problem. They're symptoms of something deeper, of not having a purpose. When you start to actively create your own purpose, those cravings for chronic consumption, they start to fade away. So, How do you create a purpose? It's simpler than it sounds. Just start following your creativity. That's it. Pay attention to what sparks your curiosity and start jotting it down. Talk to people around you about things that interest you. Ask questions, get involved in conversations, and notice what lights you up. Little by little, your purpose will begin to take shape naturally. It'll be like a puzzle slowly coming together, revealing what truly intrigues you and showing you where your skills or interests can be useful to others. Now, don't forget this crucial part. Your body is your temple. It's your machine, the one thing you can't afford to neglect. Start some kind of physical activity, anything. If you've been sedentary for a while, ease into it. Take a 5 to 10 minute walk, stretch, do a few simple movements. You don't need to go hard. What you're aiming for here are small wins. In neuroscience, this concept of small wins is actually pretty powerful. These little victories start to release dopamine slowly in a sustainable way. A steady drip rather than a quick spike. This helps shift your dopamine patterns from a phasic highs and lows to a tonic, steady, balanced state. Over time, these small physical wins make you more efficient in using your body, helping you see it not just as something that gets you through the day, but as a tool, a machine that you can optimize to bring more harmony into the world. And guess what? By creating harmony around you, you'll find you also create more harmony within yourself. Next, let's talk about something we often overlook: human connection. We're living in a time where, ironically, we've never been more connected through technology, yet we feel so disconnected from each other. And that disconnect, it makes it hard to understand our purpose in the grander scheme of things. We get stuck because we've lost sight of our spiritual context, our connection to others. The solution is surprisingly simple. Start serving. Serve others in any way you can, and the beauty of this? There are real, tangible benefits. Helping others has anti-inflammatory effects, lowers inflammatory cytokines, which are stress markers in the body, improves your immune system, and generally makes you feel better. It's almost funny, but even if you were being selfish, helping others would still be good for you. Having a purpose that's tied to serving others puts you into a flow state. It cuts through that constant rumination and shifts you into a more balanced, higher dopamine tone. You stop being a slave to the endless cycle of cheap pleasures, the bread and circuses of modern life, and instead you start shaping your own reality. You begin manifesting your world. That's when you enter a state of flourishing, of true fulfillment. So, let's sum this up. First, shift to intentional consumption. Learn to rest properly, without distractions. Second, start creating instead of consuming. Begin writing, talking to people, and letting your curiosity lead the way. Third, don't neglect your body. It's your machine, so start small with physical activity and celebrate those little victories along the way. And finally, think about your connection to others. How can you serve them more? How can you contribute to the greater good? Remember, you have way more control over your nervous system than you might think. And in turn, you have control over your life. It's time to break free from chronic consumption and step into a life of creative contribution. Let's work together to bring more harmony into the world. It starts with you. As we wrap up, I want to thank you for sticking around until the end. I hope this video gave you some new insights into how you can break free from the cycle of chronic consumption and start creating a life full of purpose and balance. Remember, it all starts with small, intentional changes. Whether it's resting the right way, getting creative, or simply taking those first steps toward a more meaningful life. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Also, share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And of course, drop a comment down below. I read and respond to all of them. So let me know your thoughts or questions. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.